getting anything from this yet. But yeah, we're live. And hello everybody. You know me. Okay, no you don't, but you know who I am. I'm Issa J, and yeah, it's episode 3 of the Bare Bones Geeky podcast. Alongside me once again is
Liam Landry.
Yes, and we're back to the original setup.
Yes.
Don't know why it didn't work for us last time, but it now is working for us, and we are excited about that. Yeah, we're still in the process of getting new equipment and all that, which we're excited about.
Yeah,
and
super excited. Yes.
Yeah, so we should be having a lot of fun and a lot of good times to be had. All right. Last week we said how this week is going to be all about Star Wars, and we had to focus that. Obviously, Star Wars, like Game of Thrones, can have a million podcasts or a million episodes, and you can always think of something different to say. So we decided to talk about the current movies. And even then, there's a lot to be talked about. So we had to focus it a little bit more. Legendary heroes. We're going to go down the seven main heroes. Talk about how we expected them to be used, what our feelings were when we realized that they weren't really used in a way we had anticipated, and our thoughts on what episode 9 is going to do in order to basically help them hopefully rectify what they've done. But we'll get to that. I feel like this was the best way for this week in order to really focus it down. Last week, obviously, Game of Thrones episode all about Night's Watch and the Battle for the Wall. There was a lot to get through. There's going to be a lot to get through here as well. But let's just go off with what did we expect when we got that first teaser trailer for Force Awakens, and when we got the first teaser trailer for The Last Jedi. What did we expect our legendary heroes to happen? We'll start off with the one we get to see first out of all the legendary heroes, and that is Mr. Han Solo himself. So, what were your thoughts on? Well, what did you expect from Han Solo?
I expected, I would say, not too much different from what we had. I definitely didn't want him to necessarily resort back to what he was, revert back. Because you never want that with sequels or characters reverting back to older selves. But, I still kind of thought he would be a lot of the same. Still good personality-wise, still kind of funny, lighthearted, and it's like, and I don't know, it's like difficult to see, but you definitely think at that point he would kind of be a mentor figure just because of his age, and he really was a good mentor figure. I'd feel for both Rey and Finn, but yeah, so I'd say that's mostly what I thought. Some change, some realistic change, but also still kind of sticking with the character and how he was left off, but also being able to use his wisdom to help the younger people and really guide them. Because that kind of reverts back to his original idea, is that he was kind of the guide, the guy who gets people around, the smuggler. Yeah. So it's essential to think that he will be the person to kind of help propel the story forward by moving people. So that's kind of the predictions there that you would think going into it.
I was hoping that, because obviously we didn't know Luke Skywalker's status at the time, I was hoping that he was going to be the one to bring our heroes to Luke, hopefully midway through the episode. But obviously that did not happen. I was thinking that he'd be way more a part of it than what he ended up being. He did portray and he did carry the story along
Mm-hmm.
for the type of character that he was written to be, which in the moment is fine. But I was expecting a little bit more. Um, the same goes for Chewbacca. I honestly thought he would be in the main front of both of these movies, fighting and being basically the war hero that Chewbacca is. However, we don't get that at all. Yeah, he's in a couple of battles here and there, and he does injure, what's his name, Kylo Ren or Ben Solo. But I thought he would be way more a part of the story, especially for Finn. Finn could have benefited a lot from having Chewbacca as like a mentor, whereas Luke and Han mentoring Rey, and Han and Leia mentoring Poe, but we didn't really get any of that. Poe is already established as this really incredible guy that doesn't need any stuff like that. But then episode 2, that's not the case. And yeah, what are your thoughts on Chewbacca?
Yeah, I think it was kind of underwhelming from what they had. I definitely did expect more from him. And if anything, I'll say this with Harrison Ford. I did also expect him to kind of die from it, because I mean he's kind of been saying that he's good, since the first movie, New Hope, saying like he already had a story arc and he could leave now. There, the character.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised we killed him off, and maybe it should have also had Chewbacca taken then if they didn't have him to have anything for him to do in the later films. I don't see why not just also have Chewbacca go, also helping them, fight off Kylo and giving them some time to escape the base that they were on. That could have been a thing for it. At least given them some type of considerable ending. I would think, kind of relating back to say Game of Thrones with Hodor, because they're both non-verbal characters that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm.
It would at least give him a segment where he could have had a honorable death, and even while it would been sad at the moment, it would still been more memorable than him playing around with some porgs. In the second movies.
Let's move on to Princess Leia, or General Leia. What did you expect from her character? And yeah,
I expected still a lot of the same. When you had her in the original trilogy, it was a character that seemed to have like, she kind of comes off as very young, the same age as Luke, of course.
mm-hmm.
But she has a lot of emotional maturity. It always struck like the idea that she had to grow up pretty quick.
Yeah.
So she always had a very cool demeanor, a very emotional control, emotional maturity, but could also give off some nice wits every now and again. Say for instance, "Aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper?" line.
Yeah, classic line right there.
So I expected more of the same. Because I would feel, because you'd think there would be differences in, say, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker for when they progress, because he's getting a little older. But since she always seemed more mature, I think it would have been a more logical thing, like that she would basically still be mostly the same. Of course, changed with other things, because if you follow the books around the expanded universe, they did already have the whole concept of Ben Solo, the whole thing. So you already had an understanding of the idea of where the main enemy is coming from. So you can also expect that there would have been emotional trauma. And I will definitely say that I like what they did with Han and Leia's relationship, showing that it was still very fractured as it would be when you had a situation like that with son turning evil to that degree and not being able to really cope with that. And I also thought it seemed like Harrison Ford's character. It seemed like Han Solo to not really be able to deal with that very well. And I liked the fact that they handled it that way instead of handling it in a very picture perfect romantic movie type of way where everything is just fine.
Yeah.
But I think she was much like Han Solo. I think she was fine in the first movie, the Force Awakens. In that regards, I think in the second movie it was just a lot was mixed up there when it tried to introduce way too much comedy and not just kind of like dry, snarky wit, but even just more generals, more zany. It's like, what are you looking at me for? It's with that there, and so it was a lot of stuff. I thought it was incredibly dumb that they just had she just has the Force and just uses it to save herself. I thought it would at least been better if they put a line in there that she was training with Luke. Because she learned, at least give her. That would have been cooler, actually, to see a General Leia using the Force for different situations.
Yeah, I think so too.
But like I said, I would still think of someone who's calm, serious demeanor, can have snarky wit at times, and also still be compassionate, because that's still like a side of her.
That's like a major part of her character.
Yeah, thinking of like after the Empire Strikes Back, consoling Luke there, and also even all her stuff with Han Solo, as it went with the whole, I love you, the whole that scene. It kind of shows that the idea that that's kind of more of what she is at her core, but like I said, it seems like she had to grow up really quickly and almost kind of conceal that, and it's kind of a balancing work between it that I think the original movies did really well.
Yeah.
Concealing the very more traditionally feminine traits of this compassion, compassion and love, and doing obviously dumb things for love, like the idea of a general of a major rebel military going undercover herself into a criminal lord's, crime lord's palace. But still at the same time balancing it with this stern, very serious general type. It showed the markings, and I would even say by the end of it, of the original trilogy, it got even a better balance between the two, and that's kind of her story arc almost, of trying to find a balance between herself. Because I don't think like a New Hope Leia would necessarily do something that brash, and granted she was carrying plans, but she was carrying plans for her her army. I don't think a New Hope Leia would go undercover like that, risking death to save someone she cares about that much. I think that was kind of a balance that they made for the later films.
So, what did you expect to get out of R2-D2 and Yoda? Two of the probably the most popular characters in the Star Wars franchise today.
With R2-D2, I would expect it to have seen him. I don't think you really need to add the BB-8. I know people like him, so it has sense there. But I don't know. It's just, he's like R2-D2, just smaller.
And gives thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that sentiment completely. I was hoping to actually see R2-D2 way more in the first movie than we did. I did like the little character moments with him and Luke Skywalker, but still not exactly where or as much as I wanted from him, you know?
Right.
And then, of course, Yoda. I honestly wasn't expecting to see him at all, so when he did show up, I was just super excited because I'm like a huge Yoda fan. And just being able to see him again was a lot of fun. Even if a lot of the times a lot of people are upset with the way they portrayed him, but not not thinking we'll see him at all and being able to see him was pretty cool. What did you think about Yoda?
I'm one of those people who didn't like the portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I think it goes back to the idea of him thinking of the Empire Strikes Back Yoda as like the original one you see, and thinking it's like it's of course an old was an old trope, that the whole concept of a um, dumb master trope to kind of throw off people. It's a very trope in kung fu movies and samurai movies, and even Western movies as well, of like an old master of like old kung fu or fighting styles or something like that,
Yeah.
to try to play dumb as a way to kind of test the hero and see if they can see through it and all. But it was, of course, just to kind of play off, and also to, I mean, people are looking for him and trying to kill Yoda, so he's trying to throw people off of his scent and make him not think, like, if they do find this guy, think, like, oh, he can't be the legendary Yoda himself. But then after he can trust Luke, he, of course, shows a very serious sign. He's like a very serious grandpa figure to you can say, because he's very wise, he's very helpful in his wisdoms, he's a very learning and understanding. He's very serious but not stern in a way. Like, he wouldn't be afraid to approach Yoda, because he's also very understanding about everything, and but it's still very serious, very like serious in a good way, type of thing. And to kind of portray him as more jokingly, I kind of say more Muppet like in ways that I didn't like. He was always making noise when he was moving. It's like, that's literally something you see when they do on the Muppets. They have like the characters make noises and grunts when they move around.
Yeah.
And it's like, he could have really offered more wisdom at that point, more understanding. I also didn't really understand the concept. I guess we get it more with Luke, but the whole concept about him caring so much about the books and the trees. But well, when it comes down to it, it's like, he could have been more understanding. I would love to have seen him talk about his relationship with Luke's father, and about how how he wasn't trust him. He saw the dark side in him, and playing back to that whole idea of is someone just completely lost to the dark side of the Force or not? Because, I mean, we can all remember Yoda did not want Anakin to be taught, because he thought he was he sensed much fear in him.
Yeah.
So it'd have been great to see his perspective on that, to really be a mentor to Luke, and not really just to hammer down this theme that they were going through the movie about the whole killing the past and everything, because it seemed like that's all the focus of his lines were, about how Luke shouldn't care about the whole books and the history, which and it's like, I think you're going with the wrong theme here. I think the theme would have been better as a teacher, because they're both essentially failed teachers. Because while Yoda didn't teach Anakin, he still mentored him and was still the leader there.
Yeah.
When Anakin turned to the dark side and killed all the younglings, and which of course mirrors what Kylo Ren did. So they could have had a much more emotional moment, both relating to their failures, but you didn't get to see that. So it's a very missed opportunity there. It's great to see Yoda again, but it's still a very big missed opportunity.
Yeah. Just to swing back on Princess Leia, I thought like all the legendary characters to get more. We get a lot more of her in episode 7. No, episode 8. And but the little bit that we do get with her, it was basically, oh yeah, here's a Death Star again. Oh, it's not a Death Star. It's bigger and more dangerous. Nah, it's a Death Star. It's a Death Star planet. And we don't really get to see any emotional connection between her and any other legendary character except for Han very briefly.
Yeah.
And we get a fun little moment with C-3PO, but he's barely ever used. And
no one ever asks him about his red arm. But didn't they get rid of that by the second movie that came out?
I don't know.
Like, I think I remember seeing it. It's like, oh, no. I guess that goes his character development that never got addressed.
Yeah, and then
because it's a very nice background if y'all ever go look it up. It's from the comic book series.
Okay.
But it is kind of a touching tribute.
Mm-hmm.
Almost. He got it from like another robot that sacrificed itself to save them.
Oh, okay.
And it was like it was an enemy droid. So it was that they were supposed to capture and all, but they like communicated. So he kind of got an understanding of like, he's kind of an enemy droid, but that doesn't mean he's not, that he's a bad person, but maybe just like controlled by bad people. And like he was a black droid, but like the acid rain that killed him that he went through to like send out the emergency signal to save him, it like burned off the paint. So it revealed that he was actually a red droid the whole time. And he took the arm because C-3PO lost the arm in the story, and kind of keep it as a memory of that droid and what he learned there. So it's actually a pretty like touching story.
Sounds like it 100%.
Yeah, so you can go and find people on YouTube that go more in depth for like a telling, or go find the comic books themselves and read them. But yeah, so yeah, it was a real interesting backstory.
And then right before, it seems like the main theme for me is the legendary heroes used more. Would you agree with that sentiment, or do you think some were used better than others?
I don't. It doesn't always necessarily mean more. Some needed to be used more, but some others just needed to be used better. Like I think Han Solo was used enough.
Yeah.
I think General Leia was, of course, used enough, even though she was technically in like a coma for part of the second movie. I think she was still around, and all, and was there enough. Just needed to be used better for the second movie. And Luke was there enough. Just needed to be used better in the second movie. Yoda, I wouldn't expect anything more than like a simple cameo from the Ghost Yoda.
Yeah.
Anyways,
anyway.
When it really comes down to it, R2-D2 and C-3PO and Chewbacca need to be used more.
And not have like new characters that are basically them in disguise.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go on to our final character. What did you expect from Luke?
I expected him to still have something in touch with what we left off on, even though he's been through a lot of stuff. But it was definitely something we did not end up getting. You still would have expected Luke to have at his basis his core values that he left off from Return of the Jedi, and like basically carry on from there. It was even kind of set up in the Force Awakens. I think Han has a line where he says like, yeah, Luke went off to find ancient temples to find out how to defeat, find information about the main bad guy and find out how to defeat him. And it's like, well, no, apparently that wasn't it. Well, to be fair, I think that's what Han Solo believes Luke is doing. But he says that because that's something that it sounds like Luke would do, you know?
Yeah, it definitely does. Because you can definitely see the difference in storytelling between what we got from J.J. Abrams versus the other guy. I can't remember his name right now.
Rian Johnson.
Mm-hmm. Most basic name out there. But yeah, I would have to say, like you said, to be fair, that would be something Han Solo would believe Luke to be doing, because that is something Luke would do. If there's a huge dark side threat, he's going to go and try to find a way to combat it. And even though Han ran away because he's never been the type of character to deal with emotional stress very well, he would believe Luke to still be Luke. And then, yeah, in the next movie, that's not what we got at all. I actually expected to see Luke in the seventh episode, but we only get to see him for like a second. Most underwhelming cameo ever. And then when it comes back in the next one, he throws his lightsaber and it's just like, oh, okay, so this is where we're going with this?
Yeah, and when it comes down to it, like I said before, I didn't understand why he cared so much about the books, because then the whole thing is like, well, even when you go back to the originals, it's like he was not really taught in the history of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
He was taught in the ability to use it and everything, but he never had to go over the history and stuff. So it doesn't make sense why he cares that much about preserving history to begin with. And also, when it comes down to it, it's like, in there he's also like, oh, the Jedis, they were all just like vain and were all cocky and stuff, and they didn't want to like teach people to use the Force, which I would say is the exact opposite. I think for the most point, they wanted to teach every single person that had Force-sensitive abilities to use the Force, because they didn't want any one of them to go to the dark side. So I think that's kind of a bad take there. But anyways, he was like, they're all cocky, so it's like, well, it seems like he hates the concept of the Jedi, but he also wants to preserve the Jedi, and it goes back to the whole theme that they were trying to say of like killing the past, and it's like, well, you had to be at least consistent with it.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is not a good concept of the past. Like, going back into the expanded universe, that's not really there anymore. When he had the original stories, Luke tried to do a new Jedi League, which he did in the movies as well, but of course, as much in the movies, it didn't turn out well.
Mm-hmm.
But he did kind of change it up. He went with mostly like older people, because what the Jedis would do is that if they find a baby that was Force sensitive, they will take the baby with them and train them from birth so that they don't make any type of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So he tried to change it around to not make the Jedis as cut off from people as before, and like change the concepts of like, oh, Jedis can't like fall in love or have kids or marry, because he was trying to change that type of perspective. So even in the original stories that were kind of coming up from him, he was already not want to preserve the past. So to have him there as the metaphor for preserving the past doesn't make sense. Just like the main villain didn't make sense for the concept of preserving the past, because he's old, but we never seen him before.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't preserve the past if he's never been around, and we don't even know. Maybe his alien race just always looked old. Maybe he was like 5. We don't know.
Yeah. So let's move into our actual thoughts of what we ended up getting. I know you've said a lot already, but overall, I just felt the legendary characters like you said, either weren't used well or just were used underwhelmingly. Main 2 points would be Chewbacca and R2D2, the one droid who basically saved everybody when they needed the most saving all the time in the prequels and the original trilogy. He'd fly around, and he was the reason why Luke was able to outsmart Jabba the Hutt. He was the reason why they survived that trash compactor. And a couple other things that happened along the way. R2D2 has always been there, and just to see him just there as a prop in the 7th episode and in the 8th, just only have character moments and not actually do anything, and then have a new droid come in and basically be hyper sentient, to where he knows, oh, let me just take control over this thing in order to save Finn and Rose. Whereas I know R2D2 is hyper sentient as well, more so than most other droids, but it was still off-putting at how much extra BB-8 was when all we needed was R2D2. Yeah, what did you feel when you actually had Chewbacca and R2D2 just not do much?
It was disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest letdowns from the Last Jedi was probably that you didn't get to see the scene of Luke realizing Han's death and coming to realization of that, or like coming to, like he sees Chewbacca and he's like, Chewbacca, wait, where's Han? And that's when he goes, but it cuts away, which is the greatest theft in cinema history, I would say, because that should have been an incredibly emotional moment.
Yeah, they should have left that camera stay on Luke for a good minute, or maybe not that long, because a minute. And
he could have also had a lot to say with Chewbacca, because they would have both shared in that. I mean, they're synonymous together. I mean, when it comes to Han Solo and Chewbacca, that's why when he saw Chewbacca, he's like, wait, Chewbacca, where's Han? So it's like, so when it comes to it, it's like such a, theft of a moment. Then there's all the stuff that you could have with BB-8 and C-3PO. Even if you wanted to have the new droid, wouldn't it have been a little more interesting to have scenes with BB-8 and R2D2 do stuff, to almost the point where he can be like the mentor to BB-8 in a sort of way. I felt like you could have had cute moments with them, and even like a little bit comedy relief moments with them too. But yeah, it's a lot of characters that didn't get enough screen time, or just characters that didn't really get good development. I guess Han kind of comes out really well after all this, because I think he was in the best shape. He's dead now, but
yeah,
it still seemed a lot like Han. And it seemed almost in a tragic way that Han Solo would go with a lot of things unanswered. His son still evil. He's still not back with Leia and everything. So it still seems like a very Han Solo way to go, or that traditional character type way to go would be to go out with because he's especially from the first movie, he's a great character, so to go out with a great ending like that.
Yeah. So the death was effective, and they did a really good job with Han, like you said, and the character type. But like watching it again the second time, I was a little bit upset with this. Basically, like in a video game, you have side missions. A lot of the stuff with Han Solo felt like a side mission, just like with Rose and Finn on whatever the crud that planet was where they gambled all the time. It just felt like a side mission where, oh, we don't have to go here, but we're going to go here. When they, the whole part where Rey ends up getting kidnapped by Kylo Ren, I feel like that could have been completely avoided. They go to this planet, and then the two sets of spies ends up calling their respective people. It's like, oh yeah, they're here. We found them. And it's just, all that could have been avoided with like Han somehow keeping a telecommunications thing going on with the Resistance, or just something where he could send out a beacon and Leia just knows through the Force, oh yeah, that's him, go bring them home. Like, it felt like a lot of the character, because Han Solo at this point, he's an older, mature, rough and ready guy. He shouldn't be making the same mistakes he did when he was younger. Maybe making different mistakes, like trying to get his son to come back, makes total sense, because a father wants his son to choose the right path. But I don't know. That's just my take on it. I felt like the little weird side bits with that lady Maz Kanata and that whole scene, that could have been easily avoided if he had the wherewithal to just be like, I know Leia knows my background and I have this here in case I'm coming back home. I feel like he would have done something like that a little different. What are your thoughts?
I feel the big reason they had that is a lot of the Force Awakens mirroring of the A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like your Tatooine cantina scene, and she's kind of like the meeting with Han Solo part there, and then of course you do have the setting up Rey with the Force part, and I thought it was a really good point for Finn story wise. So I think it was mostly just for plot convenience, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense. But sometimes characters do that, and it would also kind of seem like, I don't know, he would could probably find some way. You would think a guy who's been, an outlaw for that long would be a little more suspicious of people and be more secretive.
Yeah.
About it, but I think that's what I would probably change it about. But it still has its good points. I think that was one of the best parts for Finn in there. That whole scene, that whole sequence of events. It was for the first one because of the whole fact that he could have gotten his out then and there. He didn't, if he wanted to, but instead came back to help, and even fought that guy with the Zapaton thing. So they could have had different ways of different abilities to find out that Han Solo was there, and that would make more sense because it doesn't make much sense for his character to do something like that. But I think it's still also an essential scene for a lot of character development for the newer characters. I would also say I don't think you would have necessarily a communication on board to do that. I think you would still have to try to find someone else, but I think he would have been more, more logical about it.
Yeah, that's fair. And then the last two we're going to get to for our feelings of what we ended up getting is going to be, because Yoda only had a cameo and you spoke highly, well, not highly, you spoke your mind on both what you expected and what you ended up getting. Whereas mine is, I was just happy to see Yoda. I didn't really think much of it at the time. I'd have to rewatch that scene to really get invested in what he says. However, I think we both can agree, Ghost Force of Lightning is pretty bloody awesome.
Yeah, just too bad you don't get to see it more often.
Very much so. We should have like an entire series of just Force ghosts now. now that they can become corporeal and change physical matter.
Yeah, I wondered how they changed that up. Did you know initially that wasn't a regular thing? Force Ghost, actually. It was Qui-Gon Jinn, the Obi-Wan Kenobi's master.
Mm-hmm.
He went to some special planet that had these very ancient creatures who are Force users, and they taught him some of the basics of the Force Ghost concept, but he wasn't really able to master it. After his death, he communicated with Yoda. He could only talk to Yoda. He couldn't make a physical appearance. And then I think Yoda ended up mastering it, teaching it to others like Obi-Wan, who must have taught it to Anakin for him to do it as well.
I know that is shown a lot. Well, the scene where Qui-Gon talks to Yoda is in Clone Wars.
Yeah, it was in the Clone Wars animated one, the 3D animated. But that's where that backstory comes from. So it could be a logical conclusion, because Yoda is, in a sense, a character like a Dumbledore or things like that, where he's not just the oldest guy, he is also the master. He's one of the best of Force users of his time. So it could make sense that he could elevate the concept of Force Ghosts from even when these original alien creatures, he used it.
Yeah,
and so you probably have stuff that they can't use, like Force Lightning through the dead.
Yeah, very true.
Whether it comes back and maybe a Luke Skywalker return as Force Ghost type scene, so who knows?
We won't know until December 20th, I think it is. But let's hurry up and get on to Leia and Luke. What we thought initially after we actually got them. Very upset about episode 7 when he was only in the final scene and nothing happened. Even more upset when he throws the bloody lightsaber. I thought that was not Luke. He's not that kind of character that we grew up with.
And
also,
still once again very jokingly doing that. So I'd still say that's the biggest vein of episode 8 is the comedy they had to throw in there.
I did laugh in the joke where it's like, oh, do you feel that? Do you feel that? And he's because he's messing with the branch after Rey literally reaches out for the Force. Like, reach with your mind. I chuckled at it in the moment. How do you not? It was a cute little moment, but the more and more Luke we ended up getting, except for those key moments, one with Yoda where it was student and master yet again, or him seeing Chewbacca again for the first time, or him having a conversation with R2-D2 again for the first time, and they have those moments of, oh my gosh, the original trilogy. It basically made me want to just go watch the original trilogy yet again, because of how much of an actual story and character development we get from Luke, and more and more and more. We just keep getting frustrated that Luke isn't Luke, and then the same with Leia, especially in the 8th episode, where she is making all kinds of mistakes, keeping secrets from her own generals or whatever he is.
Now, to be fair, that was more Holdo. That was mostly seemed like her plans after General Leia was already in the coma, and and she comes out, hits Poe with that force gun or whatever it is, the stun gun, and then immediately tells him after he comes back to it. So it doesn't seem like it would have been her idea to actually keep it a secret. So,
and it's just when she comes back and she's like, "Oh yeah, this was the plan all along." It's just it didn't feel like a plan a general would make. But also, let's be honest, having an entire part of your movie just a chase scene where nothing is happening was also a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't really get a lot of good character development anyway.
Yeah, the simple fact that the original plan wasn't just everyone move off of one ship, then we point that ship in the other direction and send it into hyperspace to the other ships.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that wasn't just. That should just be the kind of the go-to maneuver when it comes to space battle from now on.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hyperspace.
It's like
missiles.
it's like when at
that's
war
actually a thing
games-
too. Like, why don't they just put like a hyperspace engine onto a missile or something and like just
Yeah.
shoot out hyperspace missiles at
And
people or something?
And then it's kind of like war games, NXT war games too, where you had the super power bomb. They did the super duper power bomb, where it's like, what, you can't beat that, you can't get higher than that. They totally ruined it for everybody now. Having a hyperspace attack and then doing that, it's like, well, we really don't want to see any real space battles because we know where it ultimately could end. But if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted more from both of the Skywalker twins, especially together. I wanted the entire original cast together one more time before any of them gets killed off. And the only time we get connection or closure is when they meet up with Leia. Han and Luke meet up with Leia respectively. And if anybody watches Mark Hamill's Twitter or anything, he's clearly upset about the whole way his character went and Han Solo's character and how they didn't even get to be together. But yeah, your final thoughts on your overall thoughts on Luke.
It's a lot of the same concept. It's a messy character that seems to have, opinions that don't really mess up. The whole have to preserve the old way. Jedis were all bad, and where it doesn't even register with the original character at all, or and also the fact that he doesn't necessarily act like Luke. And even when it came to the whole incident and everything, like, you don't think Luke would be thinking about killing someone. And I mean, even when you kind of break it down, you can make an entire aside that goes with the idea that Ben was completely in the right and for the entire incident. Because, like, you can make a concept that it was like, oh, Ben wakes up, sees that he's about to be killed, he uses the Force to protect himself. Then when the commotion, everyone comes up and they're like, what happened? And they're like, Ben killed Luke Skywalker. And he's like, no, Luke Skywalker was going to try to kill me, just using self-defense. And they're like, Luke would never have done that. It's completely out of character for him. and then they'll have the side that would go with Ben and agree with him and believe that his story, and the side that doesn't believe his story. And then they would just fight naturally, and that's how he ends up killing everyone else at the new training facility.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe it was just all big misunderstanding, all created by Luke Skywalker, thinking about killing his nephew beforehand. And it's like that comes down to the whole idea. It's like, at no point in time did we ever see Ben Solo be darker than Darth Vader was.
I mean, yeah, Anakin went into a temple and slaughtered all the Padawans. But yeah,
and it's like, and Luke still found the light in him.
He still found the light. And
That's his whole concept, and I think that should have been his major fault, is that he kept ignoring the ideas that Ben was turned to the dark side, and keep saying and be like, like talk to Leia, and it's like I think there should have been a lot more flashbacks to that incident, to that development, and he could be like to Leia, and it's like, you know, our father had some dark side in him. I've had some dark sides in me as well. It's not uncommon to see some of this and all, and have it, and then just him like come back one day and see Ben killed everyone, turn to the dark side, and that's what devastates him, is that he could have done something about it but chose not to, because he believes that everyone has some light side in them, no matter how dark they may be, they can still be saved, because that's what his character was about, is that how family and how everyone can be saved, and being and like looking at the best in everyone, every person. You should have made that his weakness and what caused him, and like for him not to even address it and not kill Ben, but at least say like, Ben, I'm not going to train you anymore or anything like that. You know, you should have made that the big motivation, and then he has to try to come to an understanding of that. Like, his whole world is shaken, his philosophy is broken, and now he doesn't believe that there's good in anyone at that point, and then have Rey show him otherwise and show that there are still good people in the world. That would seem more in keeping with his character. And you know, and everyone defends the whole Ryan Johnson position. Is like, oh, you're supposed to be pacifist, and it's like, the biggest complaint is that he was gonna kill someone. It's like, that's not a pacifist.
That was when I saw that flashback scene, I was not a fan. I was just like, but that's not Luke. He's not that brash. He was brash in the first couple of episodes, but once Return of the Jedi happened, he was like a completely different character. He was speaking in logic. He went up to, what's his name, Jabba the Hutt, and was like, hey, listen, this is how it's gonna go down. You're gonna give me all my friends back, or you're gonna die. There was no, I want my friends now, try to kill everybody there. He waited for the right time. He knew he wasn't going to get his friends back immediately there. That's why he had the lightsaber in R2-D2. That's why he had everybody ready. So once it actually came to be, boom, the plan was there. He wouldn't just go like, oh my gosh, there's a little bit of dark side in him, gotta go kill him now. That's not Luke.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that he also said, like, after it all, I became cocky, and it's like, well, how did you just revert off screen?
Right.
Just like, that's one of the biggest sins of a sequel, is characters reverting back to pre-first movie selves. And it's like, well, why are you reverting back your character? And it's like, you have other, like, it would have been more shocking to not have him fall because of his faults, but instead fall because of the things that he held important to him. Like I said, the belief that everyone has light side in them, the belief that people are generally good. That would have been bigger to turn around and have be the major problem here, more so than just, you know, more so than what it ended up being.
Yeah. And I know a few months ago, we ended up doing a whole let's fix the Last Jedi movie, which was a lot of fun. We might be able to do that for a future episode.
Yeah.
But let's because we only have a few more minutes before we have to wrap this up. Let's quickly go into legendary characters. What do we think we're gonna get in the final episode, Rise of Skywalker?
And apparently one of the legendary characters we get is Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, Lando Calrissian.
I guess we get something from him, like something dark side.
Robot Chicken reference, I think. Or is that? No, that's the Family Guy.
That was
Family Guy reference. Wrong one. Funny enough, both having and starring Seth Green.
And the Family Guy one referencing the Robot Chicken one as well.
Yes. So I'm gonna have to say that was that was a really funny scene, but that's going off topic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say Lando Calrissian. I hope we get to see a lot more of him, especially be a full-on mentor to one of the new characters, because we didn't really get that a lot. We didn't get a mentor character where you can easily see Obi-Wan and Luke Skywalker being mentor and mentoree, or student and teacher. We didn't really get that in the sequel trilogy.
I will say Poe.
Poe?
Yes.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I'm hoping not to see Princess Leia die. Just have a scene and then she goes off to live the rest of her days comfortably. Just something like that. And just keep her out of the story, because Carrie Fisher has unfortunately passed, and I don't want to feel weird about. When that scene happened and she got blown out of the bloody space station, that gave me chills, because I was like, okay, you're just gonna totally. And then the whole other thing happened with the Superman Force using. That was not cool to me. So yeah, I just have her say something, impart some wisdom to Rey, Poe, and Finn, and just live. And then she goes off and lives the rest of her days. We don't need to see her character death, especially since Carrie Fisher is dead. Your thoughts?
I think we're gonna see her death, and I don't know how it's gonna go down, but it should at least be in a classy way, I would feel, and I'm sure in an emotional moment for everyone there, referencing the fact of how she died in real life.
Yeah, I can see that.
Hopefully it's not strangled by her own bra in space. Do you know that reference?
Yeah.
Yes. For those watching who don't know the reference, that's what George Lucas was telling her, Carrie Fisher, when making the original movies, that she can't wear a bra because in zero gravity it would basically strangle you to death, and she stated that's what she wants to be put on her tombstone, is like strangled by her own bra in space.
And then quick thoughts about Luke and Luke. Do you think we're gonna? I think he's the voiceover in the trailer, so
we're gonna see him as Force Ghost Luke.
It'd be interesting if J.J. Abrams decides to do a retcon and somehow he's still alive. He just ended up on another planet somewhere because he used too much of the Force. So it just disintegrated him and brought him back somewhere else.
He didn't die. He just used Force teleportation. I think that would just upset the fans even more.
Yeah. The Force is a mysterious being.
He died, and his Force essence went out, and then got imprisoned into a doll.
And the doll is for some reason named Annabelle or Chucky.
Do you know he's the voice of the new Child's Play remake? So he's literally gonna be Chucky.
So that's what happened to him.
Yes.
Poor sap. And then Emperor Palpatine, since his laugh is at the very end, and he's probably coming back.
I think he was the actor who plays him was at a panel for whatever the Celebration Day thing. He's going to be back, and it'll be an interesting concept. Seeing people theorize that. I think one of the concepts people talk about, I think Rian Johnson was saying, like, he wanted to subvert expectations that people expected, like, you expect someone who's a character in there like Luke, that he would actually have have these this surprising character history, his parents' history. That's not just Junker, and that's why he wanted to make Rey just from Junk family. And it's like, yes, except if you think Anakin Skywalker, because Anakin Skywalker basically came from a slave. That's his background as a slave. Now, you do understand that as it goes on, that Palpatine created him by using the Force.
Yeah.
But it's still, I guess he doesn't end up subverting expectations like he thinks. But yeah, some people theorize that Rey would be a similar concept, that Palpatine is trying to make a new Darth Vader and ends up using Rey.
And what do you think about, or what do you want from R2-D2 and Chewbacca this time?
For them to be in it more.
Do you think we should get some more BB-8 with R2-D2?
Yeah, that would probably be a good combination there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to see more Chewbacca and more R2-D2, because R2-D2 is one of my favorite characters of all time, only next to like Yoda and Luke.
It's kind of funny that the character that doesn't speak is.
He has so much personality, though. Like he doesn't even need words. That's how good R2-D2 really is. Like, I can listen to those beeps and chirps and know what he's trying to portray, and that is so bloody genius. In order to have a character go and know that's fear, or and you know he's being a smart aleck. I think that's so cool.
I don't feel like you didn't have that with BB-8, huh? I don't remember what BB-8 sounds like.
I don't either.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. The only thing I remember is he can do a thumbs up with his
lighter.
His lighter, yeah. Why does he have a lighter? I don't know.
Why does he have something to shoot coins out?
I really don't know.
It's like, they must have really thought in development phase. It's like, why does he have something that shoot at coins? It's like, what if there's a tiny alien that believes he's a slot machine? How is he gonna get the coins out? And it's like, good point, Johnson.
Oh my gosh. Let's just agree, Rian Johnson was not the man for the job of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, we both want
good visuals, I would say. If he was, if they brought him back as a director of photography or cinematography, I think he actually would do well there.
I mean, he like we've said before,
it was one of the best looking Star Wars films.
Yeah, and like we both said before, it was one of the best with pure moments. Seeing that hyperspace black hole deal was one of the coolest looking things in a Star Wars movie of all time. And that entire experience was amazing, but that does not hold the film together. You actually need the story. But yeah, to wrap up, we both want this final movie, The Rise of Skywalker, to be amazing. Obviously, we love the franchise, which is why we're talking about it, and we want it to end on a high note. We want it to be great. Quick predictions for Rey.
That's funny there to say end. Is that also what we're going to say? End on a high note for episode 26.
Yes. So, quick thoughts, quick predictions. Who's Rey's real parents?
Junker and Palpatine.
Junker and Palpatine using the Force. Okay. I'm going to go with Palpatine and Luke Skywalker because she's a Luke Skywalker clone. I'm going with that one.
Oh, okay. So not pregnant Luke Skywalker.
Not pregnant Luke Skywalker. No. Somehow Palpatine got the hand.
It would be an interesting concept with the cloning because she's also a girl.
It would. It definitely would.
So, because we know there's direct cloning in these clone troopers, but we don't know about the concept of changing someone's, like taking the genes but changing them up a bit to be a woman.
And I think that would be really interesting. All right. Any final thoughts you can think of?
No.
All right. Well, then that's our show. Thank you guys so much for everybody who decided to come by and watch and have some geeky fun times about Star Wars. We both really appreciate it. Before we do our sign off, next week it's Endgame. So our episode is going to be about Marvel. What we're going to talk about Marvel? You'll know next week. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like what we do, please give us those sexy likes.
And the unsexy ones.
If you really like what we do, then you gotta share this and all of our videos to all of your friends.
And enemies.
After you do that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that way you are part of the skeleton army. And then ring the notification bell because
you want to get notified for when we go live for this podcast, the Bare Bones Geeky podcast, and also for when we put up other videos. I know Anime Monday there's supposed to be some anime reviews and just any other general videos, polls, information, things like that. It's very important because YouTube is not sending out to all the subscribers for some reason for people, so you have to get notified if you want to see that stuff.
Yeah, and also comment down below and tell us what you guys think about Star Wars, what we talked about, your thoughts on it all, especially the legendary characters, since that's what we discussed today. Follow me on Twitter at IsaJ_STP.
Follow me on Twitter at Liam_SWA.
And once more, thanks again for watching. Until next time, it will be awesome. See you later, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everyone.